Hello, good morning. Marvin Sylvester here again. Today is the 7th of May 2023. Sunday. Sunday video, which is good. And where am I today? Today I'm actually in the Pleasantville area. Nice community here in South Trinidad. And as you can see, I'm next to the main road, so you'll be hearing a lot of cars and vehicles passing, right? So first things first, as usual, thank you to everyone who's been watching, liking, sharing, subscribing the videos. It's helping our community to grow, and as usual, I greatly appreciate it, I greatly value it, so thank you very much, right? That's that. What are we gonna cover this week? So we're just gonna cover a couple local stories, local related stories, and one small update for Alfa Nero. Not much on the Alfa Nero front, right? So this week, the big article for me was the conclusion of the IMF's Article 4 report on Trinidad and Tobago. Now, remember when we covered this almost a couple months ago, I would have indicated that the report which was done was as the staff report, meaning there was a delegation that came to Trinidad and they did an assessment, and the report that we saw at that time was the assessment of that team, right? And I indicated that they still have to present that information to the executive board of the IMF, who would make the final deliberation and say and conclusion on the report. So what we have coming out this week was the conclusion from the executive board, and I believe that'll be like the final say all on the report, right? So we have it here. We'll go through it just like last time, and I'll chat on the points that stood out to me, and of course I'll put a link to that report in the description, which I recommend you should go and review, right? So let's go into it, right? The title of it is IMF Executive Board Concludes 2023 Article 4 Consultation with Trinidad and Tobago. Notice the difference in the name, right? Not no staff report. This is the Executive Board conclusion, right? Dated 5th May 2023. It starts: Washington DC, on end of lapse of time date May 1st 2023, the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund concluded the 2023 Article 4 consultation with Trinidad and Tobago and considered and endorsed the staff appraisal without a meeting. And I think that opening point is very, very important. Why? Because what it says to me is it shows that the executive board had full faith or full confidence in the reporting team, and they now, after reviewing the report from the team, which would have been generated in consultation with the government of Trinidad and Tobago, of course, they had full faith in it, in the team, and in the contents of the report itself. So they would have gone through it and said, hey, we agree with this, we don't need to go and consult with the team further or consult with the government of Trinidad and Tobago further, we happy to endorse this report. And I think that's good. It says a lot about not just the team that did the report, not just the government, but the actual information in it. That is just my conclusion on that opening thing, right? Which is good. So it goes on to state, Trinidad and Tobago's economic activity is recovering, supported by higher global energy prices and the rebound of the non-energy sector, which we knew at the time of the report. Real GDP is estimated to have expanded by 2.5% in 2022, which is good. Inflation has increased, reaching 8.7% by the end of 22, driven by imported energy and food prices, partial liberalization of domestic fuel prices, which we knew in 2022, and domestic weather-related shocks, things like floods and whatnot, right? It goes on to state, the financial sector appears well capitalized, liquid, and profitable. Higher energy prices contributed to further improving the external position in 2022 and turning the fiscal position into a surplus in financial year 2022 for the first time in over a decade. And if you go back to the initial report, it would have said that there was a budget surplus of 0.3% of GDP in 2022, right? It also states public debt has declined. And if you go back to the report again, we'll see where it stated central government debt declined to 53.8% of GDP, down from 60% of GDP in financial year 2021. And gross public debt declined to 71% of GDP, down from 79.2% of GDP in financial year 2021. Right? So, public debt has declined, right? Continuing, the economic recovery is expected to gain broad-based momentum in 2023, right? That is where we would have seen the report where it said that GDP is expected to increase by 3.2% in 2023. Inflation is projected to slow to 4.5% at the end of 2023 and continue declining with international prices straightforward as energy prices cool, as other imported goods into Trinidad start to cool, the prices drop, our inflation is expected to drop straightforward. The current account surplus will narrow in line with anticipated decline in global energy prices, reaching 6.6% of GDP in 2023. International reserve coverage is expected to remain adequate at around 7.2 months of prospective total imports and is complemented by large public external buffers in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund of about 18.4% of GDP. Now, from a couple videos ago, you all know how I feel about the Heritage Stabilization Fund. I gave my thoughts on what I would do if I had a say, which was we understand that what we have there, the approximately $5 billion in US in Heritage Stabilization Fund, we did a mixture of portfolio investments and cash. We would deal with that, but I've made my thoughts clear that an investment in gold, so a little car pass in here. Alright, just wait until they pass a bit. Right, so, and I made my thoughts clear that I think we should also diversify into gold, right? That's just my thoughts on that matter, right? Goes on to say the overall fiscal balance is projected to turn into a deficit of 2.8% of GDP in financial year 2023, reflecting lower energy revenues due to decline in energy prices, domestic production, and increased capital spending. So the budget in financial year 2023, whereas we had a surplus last year, it's expected to have a deficit this year. Straightforward. The balance of risks to the outlook is tilted to the downside. Downside risk stems from potential disruptions to domestic oil and gas production, a sharper than expected global downturn affecting energy markets, and global financial instabilities. On the upside, there is the potential for higher than expected energy prices and production, including new or expanded projects and new renewable energy projects. Now, in terms of new renewable energy products, I covered recently the soil turning for the place somewhere down in Central there that they're planning to build a solar farm. There's supposed to be another solar power farm in North Trinidad. So we know about those projects coming online. But in terms of new or expanded projects, there's a question there. I saw someone on LinkedIn ask a question about what these new projects might be. I myself am not sure. I would have referenced the Newsday article from in January earlier this year, where that article indicated that Heritage did some stuff, some wells and stuff last year, and they projected to do some wells. A lot of they're supposed to have a increased drilling campaign this year. I am not sure how that is going, how that is happening. I can't say. I guess time will tell by the end of 2023 how that is all going to turn out, right? But again, that is the potential upside. It goes on to state the Executive Board assessment. Trinidad and Tobago's economy is recovering. In 2022, economic growth picked up, led by the non-energy sector. Inflation has increased, which was explained earlier, driven by imported energy and food prices, the partial liberalization of fuel prices and floods, stated earlier. In 2023, the recovery is expected to gain broad-based momentum, right? Inflation is projected to slow, stated that earlier as well, in line with international prices. In 2022, the external position was stronger than the level implied by fundamental and desirable policies. The balance of risks to growth is tilted to the downside, which we just explained, right? The fiscal position is expected to swing from surplus in financial year 2022 to a deficited financial year 2023, just explained, and then stabilize at moderate deficits over the medium term. It is recommended to continue prudently managing the energy revenue windfall, avoiding procyclical spending, and rebuilding fiscal buffers, while providing targeted support to the most vulnerable. The fiscal stance in financial year 2023 budget is appropriate. So basically they're saying whatever policies or steps taken in the 2023 budget, they're saying it's appropriate. Capital expenditure will support the economic recovery and address critical bottlenecks, example infrastructure, but it needs to be efficient and high quality, straightforward. The spending contingency plan will help stabilize fiscal accounts, which should downside risk materialize. Straightforward, put mitigation things in place. And I do remember in the media conference recently, the Finance Minister, Mr. Imber, did indicate that he's going to continue with capital expenditure projects, even if there's some negative effects or deficits arising out of that, if I remember correctly. So we can expect that, right? The authorities' commitment to balancing the budget over the medium term is prudent and welcome, which makes sense. To support this effort, it is recommended to enhance revenue mobilization, cut down non-priority current expenditure, and maintain public debt well below the new soft target, which was, like, if I remember correctly, 70-something% of GDP. I can't remember the exact figure right now, right? Additional revenue could be generated by implementing tax reforms and strengthening the tax administration. Right there, property tax comes to mind. I know that is a very ticklish issue, so I won't go into that. But again, there's the restructuring of the Revenue Authority and things being put in place, so I believe that's what that is referring to. It is advisable to continue gradually phasing out subsidies. Again, that is their recommendation. We already see that the subsidies on the fuel is being reduced gradually. Streamlining transfers to state-owned enterprises and improving public spending efficiency while preserving the spending for the most vulnerable, supporting growth-friendly expenditure, and protecting essential capital spending. So, very straightforward, but I would just want to add here, as you all know from my previous videos, I also indicated if we go into keep seeing a surplus, if you go in a budget surplus, if you're going to keep growing the GDP of Trinidad and Tobago, I would have made my suggestions. One of them being that we should try to promote more companies coming to Trinidad, doing business here, to encourage remote work, right? Increase international events and boosting the entertainment sector. also indicated, well, we covered the special economic zones. I said we should start to build more of those things, get these companies to come down here and increase that sort of model. And recently, in my last video on Wednesday this week, we spoke about UE and the chocolate factory, using our raw materials here, increasing our manufacturing capabilities and production of refined products to sell on the international markets with the best possible premium, right? So I still believe in that. All those things are things that I believe we should engage in, seriously engage in, to help boost the GDP, boost the economy, and to ensure that, you know, we keep growing. Not just the balanced budgets, but, you know, increase surpluses over time, right? Just my thoughts. So it also, we continue with the article, long-term fiscal risk related to pension system and the global energy transition need to be addressed. The national insurance system's deficit is expected to widen, gradually depleting its reserve by mid-2030s. The authority's proposal to increase the retirement age to 65 years will partially contain the deficits. So, stop right there. Remember, even from Minister Imbert's last press conference, they stated that there were people for it, some people against it. There are other countries that are doing it. Jamaica, Barbados, they're already much higher than us. There's precedents here in Trinidad and Tobago. I think it was the UTT professors and the judges in the judiciary. They already have a much high retirement age. And again, this is just the retirement age, nothing to do with the actual pension age for people who have the earlier pensions and stuff. This is just increasing the retirement age to 65 to allow people to work longer, to make more pension contributions. I remember there was a downside to it where people who would have been filtered out of the system at 60 now getting 5 more years, which would humbug other people's promotion. So that is an issue. But generally, I would say, Marvin would say, I agree with the increasing of the retirement age. I see the benefits of it far outweigh the downsides, in my opinion. It also states increasing contribution rates could also help. Now that is a particular issue. I think the Minister Imbert also indicated that the increasing the actual contributions is something that is a very, very last resort, and they're not looking towards that right now. Right? Continuing, an energy transition that avoids disruptive policy adjustments requires the design of sustainable long-term fiscal strategy. Enhancing the fiscal policy framework would help strengthen planning and reinforce fiscal sustainability. A rule-based medium-term fiscal framework would strengthen policy formulation, help avoid procyclical spending, and mitigate fiscal risk. This could include a formal fiscal anchor with an escape clause for unexpected events. To support fiscal discipline and sustainability, a sound debt management strategy will mitigate macro-financial risk. I cannot claim to say that I fully understand what that means, but I'm assuming it's a positive recommendation, right? It is encouraged to maintain sound and consistent policies to support the exchange rate arrangement. Important point coming up here. The Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago should seriously consider increasing its repo policy rate to contain inflationary pressures and narrow the negative interest rate differentials with the US monetary policy rate. This would also mitigate potential risks of capital outflows and reduce excessive risk-taking incentives that could threaten financial stability. Now, I remembered in the media conference, Mr. Imbert stating that our policies don't dictate that we have to increase our interest rates to manage inflation. That is something that happens by policy. It is a policy. The US, they have to do that. We don't have that policy here. The central bank is carefully watching it, and they will make adjustments if needed in the future. But at this point in time, they don't have to. That is one. And I remember the minister also indicating that looking at examples of what other countries have done, seriously increasing the interest rates could be actually detrimental to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. So I don't see us increasing the interest rate, the central bank interest rate, at any point in time in the future, right? Continuing. Reforming the foreign exchange rate market infrastructure remains a priority to eliminate foreign exchange shortfalls. It would also create a more conducive business environment for the private sector to invest and diversify the economy. Over the medium to long term, greater exchange rate flexibility would reduce the need for fiscal policy adjustments over the cycle to allow for counter-cyclical monetary policy. The authorities are encouraged to remove all restrictions on current international transactions while providing sufficient foreign exchange to meet the demand for all current international transactions. Now, I can't remember what the minister said exactly on that point, but I think they're not going to go down that road of removing the restrictions at this time, right? Continuing on. The authorities need to remain vigilant to the vulnerabilities in the financial system. The system appears sound and resilient, but vulnerabilities emanate from rising household and business debt, high exposures to the sovereign, and interconnectedness. Closely monitoring financial risk is warranted, and this is true. We already saw that at the time when the initial staff report came out, you would have had 3 banks collapsing: the Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Credit Suisse, right? 2 in the US, Credit Suisse in Europe. Of recently, we had First Republic Bank collapse just last month, and right now, I've been seeing reports that these few banks are almost on the verge of collapse. Time will tell. These are Comerica, PacWest Bancorp, Western Alliance Bank, and Zion Bank. So there is need to be extremely vigilant regarding the international financial system. As I would have covered in previous reports, everyone is basically saying that the Trinidad and Tobago's domestic banking system is very sound, it's very resilient, it's very safe. So for the technocrats who are doing that, well done to them, and we just need to keep that up, to keep up our vigilance, right? Continuing. Staff welcomes the progress in enhancing the resilience of the banking and insurance sectors in line with the 2020 Financial Sector Assessment Program recommendations. However, progress is needed in transforming the investment fund sector from constant to variable net asset value, enhancing the consolidated supervision of conglomerate groups, providing the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago with explicit macroprudential authority and tools, and strengthening the supervisory resource and independence in line with international best practices. Staff welcomes and supports the authorities' efforts in embracing fintech financial technology for financial inclusion and development while working on mitigating its potential risks. Noteworthy are the efforts in the collaboration with the IMF technical assistance to develop the fintech ecosystem, example, the joint regulatory hub, launching a regulatory sandbox, developing the payment system, and strengthening the cybersecurity. All positive things which I won't venture to try to analyze too much, not my thing, right? Staff welcomes the authorities' efforts to strengthen financial integrity and international tax transparency frameworks following the removal from the Financial Action Task Force monitoring list in February 2020. The authorities are encouraged to further strengthen the anti-money laundering, combating financing of terrorism framework. The staff welcomes authorities' commitment and efforts to addressing issues related to European Union's Commission tax blacklist, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's Global Forum requirements on exchange of information on request and automatic exchange of information standards. It's supposed to be straightforward stuff for those of you who are familiar with these things, right? But I'm just going into economic diversification requires supporting policies to address structural bottlenecks. The authorities need to step up their efforts towards improving business environment by delivering on their Vision 2020 agenda. Now this Vision 2030 agenda, this is something that I'm going to look up because I haven't really heard much about it. So I'm going to look up on this, right, and hopefully get back to you all on it. The country's digitization agenda to deliver more efficient public services, improve business environment, and enhance social safety net is welcome. The country's actions to reduce greenhouse emissions are commendable. It is important to continue advancing the work on the renewable energy projects and the new green hydrogen strategy, right? So we spoke about the solar project earlier, right? Those supposed to be coming on stream. The central bank's integrated climate change considerations in financial sector supervision, focusing on risk management, stress testing, and data collection is welcome. All good points, right? Right? The quality, timeliness, and coverage of statistics has improved, but challenges remain. It is recommended to strengthen the institutional capacity with the operationalization of the Independent National Statistical Institute and to build on recent efforts to broaden fiscal data coverage of state-owned enterprises and other public bodies. Right? Last 2 points here. 1. Under Article 4 of the IMF's Articles of Agreement, the IMF holds bilateral discussions with members, usually every year. The staff team visits the country, collects economic and financial information, and discusses with officials the country's economic developments and policies. On return to headquarters, the staff prepares a report which forms the basis for the discussion by the Executive Board. Right? 2. The Executive Board takes decisions under its lapse of time procedure when the Board agrees that a proposal can be considered without convening formal discussions. And then the report goes into several different tables. And that's it. That's it. So, generally, overall, I think it's a positive report. I'm pretty sure the minister would continue to say, the finance minister, Mr. Imbert, will continue to say that the report is a very positive report. And yeah, we see the information there. Now, naturally, there would be those who would disagree with the report. And just in today's Sunday's Express, right, today, 7th May 2023, there was a Express article dated, titled, Economist, Data Tells a Different Story, right? It was by Camille Hunt. So I'll just go and read a little bit in that article and then I'll just give my thoughts on it after, right? So the article states, economist Dr. Roger Hussein says he is not in agreement with the International Monetary Fund statement which concluded that Trinidad and Tobago's economy is recovering. Hussein, and then it goes on further to state, Hussein, however, said the data tells a different story. He said he preferred to look at the data itself rather than worded reports. Because the IMF, and he's quoted saying, because the IMF and some of these institutions tend to write flowery, so I tend to rely on data in the report, and if you look at the data in the report, it tells you a disturbing story about Trinidad and Tobago economy. Hussein said the data showed TNT having 4.5% reduction in real GDP growth in 2023 compared to 2022. Now, he also said this was a substantial downgrade. Now, I tried to find this info in the report that Mr. Hussein is referring to, right? I couldn't see it. Maybe it's because I am not an economist, but I I couldn't see it. And there's nothing showing or referencing any 4.5% reduction in real GDP. I didn't see that. Maybe someone else would be able to point that out. In the article, it also continues, another feature of the concluding statement is the dramatic change in the country's real effective exchange rate. I was astonished when I looked at the data and it posted us at about 8% more appreciated today in 2023, in the 2023 report as compared to the 2022 report. So whatever data the IMF got from the Central Statistics Office, new and improved data tells us a completely different story about the Trinidad and Tobago economy. Now, I want to just stop there and offer my 2 cents, right? Just my 2 cents, right? Now, when this report was being generated, it was being generated in the month of March 2023. And for them to generate the report, naturally they had to look at past data, right? Data prior to that, and current data at that time, which would have been a snapshot of the economy at that point in time. Now, if the past data and the data up to that point in time, the snapshot of the economy showed that there was a budget surplus in 2022 of 0.3%. There was a real GDP growth of 2.5% also in 2022, and there's a further projected GDP growth of 3.2% in 2023. Well, in my opinion, that is just what the data says. There's no way they would have had the data, well, according to what Mr. Hussein is referring to, whatever central statistics data that they have now in May, they would not have had that in March. So they have to make the report based on the information that they have available to them up until March 2023. And that data would have reflected what is stated in the report. And I don't think that the IMF would have been biased towards the government and try to spin it in a way to make it favorable to the government in any way. That's just my thoughts, right? And if there's new and improved data showing differently, right? My thoughts are that Mr. Hussein should actually go and get those actual data, that actual data, and contrast it against what is in the report and give us a thorough analysis, right? That is just my humble layman's looking at it view, right? So just my humble thoughts on that. And strangely enough, just as I was about to make this video, I saw a tweet from Minister Imbert himself saying something extremely similar, where he was saying that the info was gathered in March and that a UE economist using imaginary data to discredit the IMF was using imaginary data to discredit the IMF. And that tweet and that last point with the IMF stood out to me, because you also have to remember that this report is an IMF report. It is not a Trinidad and Tobago government report. So again, I am trying to take a very impartial position on it. If you look at the report gives generally a positive. We just don't say the report. If you look at the IMF's report, it generally gives a positive outlook based on the data that was available at that time. And that is just my point. So if there's any new data right now, obviously that new data is not going to be captured in the report in March. And if there's new data showing otherwise, well, present the data and show the direct comparisons or contrasts or whatnot, as the case might be. I think that's just the way that it should go. So in closing, I'll just say that just as I was saying last time, I hope to see some very good analysis being done on this latest report. If anyone has anything updated to say on it, I hope to see the analysis by the subject matter experts, because I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm not an economist, right? I'm just a layman, right? Let the subject matter experts come and really show what is what. And I guess at this point in time, very soon we're going to probably have the Finance Minister, Mr. Imbete Game, having to run out and defend it, just like I said last time. But we'll see. Anyway, going on to just a quick something now. I saw oil now report dated the 5th of May 2023. It was, the title of it was "No Word on Continuity of Gas Deal Between Trinidad and Venezuela" by Shekima Day. Now that article was referring to, it referred heavily to an article in the Daily Express, and it was talking about, like, for the longest while there's been no progress between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela in making the Dragon deal happen. The gist of the report was that Venezuela is heavily focused on certain corruption issues and whatnot within the Venezuelan government right now, and the Dragon deal has somewhat taken a backseat for a while. If this is true, it's troubling. It's troubling because we really need this Dragon gas field. I'm going to say 4.2 trillion cubic feet of gas, how much ever amount of gas we're supposed to be able to get per day out of this. We really need it. And if you followed my or viewed my Wednesday video where I spoke about small scale LNG, right? Small scale LNG and the development of a small scale LNG hub so that we could meet certain commitments which are tied into the license that was granted by the US government to facilitate the development of Dragon gas field. You will understand why it is, in my view, this news, or if true, that Dragon has hit a snag and nothing is happening with it, is not progressing, it's very troubling. It's troubling. Because as we know, the license is only for 2 years. We don't know if it's going to be renewed. And I think that for the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago and all stakeholders involved, I really hope this thing gets sorted out. If I had to speculate just a little bit, I think another reason why this could be on the back burner is because Venezuela is not to get any monetary benefit out of Dragon. That is one part of the license requirements. So, and I was stated even on Wednesday, I don't know how Venezuela is going to benefit. So I think hopefully somebody could come up with some ideas on how Venezuela could benefit from this. Give them the incentive to put this back on the front burner because they're going to benefit XYZ down the road. Just my thoughts. Alright, and the last article I want to cover this week is another luxury launches article dated the 2nd of May 2023. And for this, I'm not going into the article itself, but the title of the article says it all. And it states, the government of Antigua is paying more than $122,000 US every month just to maintain Russian billionaire Andrei Gurev's seized $120 million Alfa Nero superyacht. The vessel has been abandoned for more than a year after being raided by the FBI, by Neha Tandon Sharma. So that $122,000 US per month, to me, that is just the main standout thing that update. The fact that we got this figure now, probably from the Antigua government, stating that this is a lot of money to maintain this boat per month, and they're going to be constantly absorbing that cost until they get the sanctions lifted which they have a team working on that. But until they get the US sanctions lifted so that they could sell the boat and recover all the money that they've been putting into it and then some. So for the Antigua government, I would say I truly hope that they get the sanctions lifted and it works out in their favor. They get the boat auctioned and they recover whatever they've been putting in. Because yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a drain on the economy, right? So yeah, and that's it. So that brings me to the end of all the things that I wanted to cover this week. If you've watched the entire video, as usual, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Someone recommended that I should try to be a little bit more hyped or animated in these videos. I tried, right? I'll keep trying. But those of you who know me know that's not Marvin normally. But I'm trying, right? But if you've watched the entire video up to this point, again, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. If you've enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't done so as yet. Also, if you've really enjoyed the video, there will also be a link to my Buy Me a Coffee where you can help give a contribution to help our channel to grow. Also, everything that has been discussed, all the articles that I've referenced in the video will be linked in the description, and that's it for the news this week. All that remains for me to say is the usual, which is keep informed, stay vigilant, be prepared. Do have a wonderful day whenever you see this video. Have a wonderful week ahead, and as usual, take care. Bye bye till next one.